In June of 2024, journalism student Hannah Harris drove to a remote Missouri cabin to interview an elderly hunter about local folklore. She expected tall tales and childhood memories. What she recorded was a 65-year-old confession that would haunt her long after she left that cabin. It's a confession about the shot that changed everything, about the creature that refused to die. As a fifth-generation Missourian, Hannah had been in many cabins that looked like this one, yet there was an eeriness to the air that she could not explain. A chill far too cold to match the summer weather. And before Corbin Andrews began to tell the harrowing story he kept buried for over 6 decades, Hannah counted 7 stuffed elk and bear hide hanging on the wall, and without warning, a black bear hide as dark as night fell to the ground with a thud, causing Hannah to jump from her log seat. And on seeing Corbin fail to as much as flinch at this, her curiosity piqued. And with that, Corbin began to speak his harrowing truth. A lot of people don't know about the Osage Indians. They're not really Osage at all. Osage, that's a French word. It's not an Indian word. It means calm water. They finished with the Bagnell Dam in 1931, and there was already an Osage River then. I don't know why they called it the River Osage. If Osage means calm water, that river's anything but calm. In any case, I was born in 1948, 17 years after that dam was complete, and my dad and my Uncle Jason lived in Lynn Creek, but the home where they grew up, it's under the lake now. And they told me that they had to drag Grandpa out of that house. He wasn't going to leave his home no matter what some rich folks from Massachusetts thought about it. I used to love stories about Grandpa. He died when I was 9 in 1957, and when Dad and Uncle Jason took me hunting in November of 1959, I wanted to get a deer in Grandpa's memory. And since I was young and foolish, it was my first time hunting, I thought I could also get some quail for him and some pheasant too, because the seasons overlapped. That November was my first ever hunting trip, and I had 5 days to shoot a deer. We all sat in the cabin on November 16th, the day before deer season opened. Well, it wasn't this cabin exactly. That fire back in '82 burned up most of the cabin. We had to rebuild it, but we're sitting in pretty much the exact same place. This is a relic of the old days. Dad and Uncle Jason made me shoot a target for weeks. And the deal was that I had to push 6 shots in a row right in the bullseye before I could actually hunt. There was something about that, see, that number 6. That's a powerful number, 6. I remember Mama counting money out every now and again. She always counted that money, and when she came back from the store, when she paid a bill, or even when she gave me $1 or $2 to go to the corner shop, I remember that look of concentration on her face as she used to pause at 5 and then hurry so she could get through 6 really quick. It was like Mama breathed again at 7 or 27 or 37. I don't think she did it at 17. Maybe if it was called 1 and 6 instead of 16, but she would have jumped past that one too. 6 mattered to Mama, 6 mattered to Dad, and Uncle Jason. So I had to get 6 shots right where they belonged, and only then did that make me trustworthy enough to go after a deer. See, Dad and his brother, he thought deer were special. That they had the teacher, I think it was junior high, and she was Osage, and the Osage Indians, they didn't worship deer, but they were important. They were real important. Deer gave them meat, skin for clothes, guts for cords, and for other things too. Without bison, they'd all die, sure, but without deer, the Osage would not have thrived. So I guess the point is that my dad didn't want me winging a deer and leaving it alive and hurting. Not a deer. He didn't make me hit a target before I was allowed to go after squirrels, but I had to hit that target 6 times before I could point a gun at a deer. It was that simple. So I shot that target for months before I made it 6 times in a row, and then I had to do it all over again because, well, the first time I was alone, right outside of the cabin. I was excited. I think what I loved most about it was that Dad and Uncle Jason, they treated me like an adult now and not like a kid. They still knew I was a kid, but I was a kid in the middle of growing up now. I was a kid who wasn't just a child anymore. I was doing something that men did. That made the difference. I was still a kid, though. I think that's probably why they didn't believe me when I said that I saw that howler for the first time. See, when I saw it, I said it was a catamount, but it was black. It wasn't sand-colored. We called them catamounts because my grandparents, they grew up in the East. Most of my friends, they called them cougars or mountain lions, but they all saw them in movies. They're not in real life, because Missouri, they pretty much killed them all off in the state. They probably would have listened to me if those cats were still around. That face wasn't a cougar's face. It was shaggy. It was more like a bear. And plus, it had horns on the top of its head, but like sheep horns or goat horns, not like deer or elk, and there were two more coming out from the sides. It was like someone took a catamount, a bear, and a Jacob sheep and squeezed them all into one. They didn't believe me, of course. What grown man is going to believe a child telling a story like that? Would you believe it? No. Dad and Uncle Jason thought that was real important for a boy to learn by making mistakes. So they thought if I tracked it for them, just like they taught me to track, I'd lead them to something normal, and I'd learn a good lesson, and they'd let me look at the brush, and they'd let me see the broken leaves and the scattered twigs and the needles on the ground, and they'd let me lead them forward, and then, sure enough, they taught me good, because I found the devil. It was back in the trees before they could see it, and then there was this howling. So Uncle Jason said that it was a wolf, even though Dad said that wasn't like any wolf he'd ever heard before. He still said to me that I saw a wolf. I just thought that it was black. I didn't though. I didn't see a catamount either. We headed toward the howling. We saw it in the big clearing. It looked like a giant catamount, but jet black, and it had this long tail coiled up. It was like a spring. And the paws, it was too big for its legs. And then, when we saw it, Dad was the one who said, "Howler," before it ran into the woods again. Dad said that he wanted to go after it. Uncle Jason said that Ozark howlers, they never hurt anybody, but even I knew that howlers were a bad omen. See, if you saw one, it meant that something bad was going to happen. And back then, I didn't really know the difference between a sign of something bad and the cause of something bad. If bad things happen because of howlers, then I should kill it. I guess it seemed to me like a good idea. Killing the thing that always showed up to say something bad was on the horizon. Anyway, Dad said that my first hunt could make me famous. And so Uncle Jason finally agreed. And so our deer hunt was suddenly a howler hunt. There wasn't a whole day of tracking behind me, even a half a day. This all happened just an hour or so after we left the cabin. My mind wasn't getting muddled. It wasn't like those nights when I felt like I was gonna just fall right over where I stood. It wasn't like my mind would rage against my body because I wanted to be awake with Dad and Uncle Jason and not sleeping like a kid. I was wide awake. And when we tracked that howler, just like I was taught, my gun was ready to go. I might have had a second to fire. Dad wanted me to kill it. I thought he wanted me to be famous. The kid who proved the howler was real. And so I held my rifle just like I was supposed to, so when the time came, I could get it right up to my shoulder and I could fire. I practiced shots just like that already. I had the Winchester 30-30. It was my dad's gun before he gave it to me. The gun had already shot a deer and elk and pigs and I think catamounts before they all got killed off in Missouri, and now it was gonna get a howler. Might be the first gun to ever shoot one. I was gonna be the hunter that did it. I imagined that head done up right by Larson's trophy, but then I thought I wouldn't do that at all, but I'd give it to a museum. All my classmates, they would see my name on that little plaque right next to it. Ozark Howler, taken November 17th by Corbin Andrews. I imagined Reggie Ventris seeing that and just turning green with envy. I guess back then I wanted Rose Ellen Bloom to see it too, but I didn't know much why other than that she was pretty, and I liked it when she smiled. But I held my rifle, and I knew that when I saw that howler, I would try to just do what Dad and Uncle Jason taught me to do. A quick snap up would put the butt on my shoulder and my eyes would line up with the sights. I should be able to shoot in less than 1 second. That's how it worked. Snap, sight, and shoot. Only I should have known that it would be different with a howler. There was nobody in Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas who could track like Uncle Jason. No white man, anyway. There were probably Osage Indians somewhere who could, but most of them were already on a reservation in Oklahoma. There's Indian spirit roams the mountain taking revenge for them. They deserve better than the reservation, but that's another story. The point, though, is that if there was an Osage around, he could probably track better than Uncle Jason, but nobody else would. Nobody. Snap, sight, shoot. I could already see Rose Ellen smile. Dad walked by Uncle Jason, and then a little ahead of him and to the side when Uncle Jason said that we were real close. Real close. I squeezed my hands and then unsqueezed them on my rifle. I knew my time was coming. Back then, I wouldn't dream of saying it, but I can now. It was exciting as hell. That's what it was. It was exciting as hell. I was just about to make the most important kill of my life. Actually, I was about to make the most important kill of anyone's life. My heart was beating like an Osage drum. That was the drum of the heart of the Osage community, so I guess that makes a lot of sense. It was right there, right in front of me, and it howled. This long, powerful howl, as it stood on its hind legs, and it stared this vicious stare right at me. The rifle snapped up, I sighted, but I paused, my finger on that trigger. For some unknown reason, I started counting in my head like Mama did with her money. I was going to count to 7, and then I'd fire, but I counted to 6. I felt this chill come over me. My finger pressed that trigger, but I swear my mind had nothing to do with it. But I knew as I pulled that trigger, I hit. There's never been a shot better than that shot. I lowered my rifle in happy confusion. I was famous. Maybe I'd even take Rose Ellen to an ice cream social. It was done. I won. I got the best trophy ever. It wouldn't even be a trophy. But something was wrong. See, the howler just stood there howling as it stared right at me, stared into my soul with its vivid red eyes. I glanced at Uncle Jason. He lifted up his gun, but before he could even fire, the animal just bounded away, and I saw Dad staring at where it had been, and he fell to his knees and then we saw it. Blood. So much blood. Right there in the middle of his body, where his chest met his belly, there was a .30 caliber hole. My bullet had found its target. My father stared at us for a second before letting out that wet sigh and falling to the ground, and I fell down right next to him. My childlike cries were begging for him to get up, standing in a spot where the true color of his clothes used to be. Dad held his hand out at me. I saw the number 6 right there, right on his palm, outlined in blurred red lines and creases. And after he fell silent, I still begged for him to wake up. I couldn't believe the way it was, that I had missed the howler and I hit my dad. I don't remember leaving my dad and passing through the trees back home, as try as I do. It never comes back to me. But I got home somehow. Uncle Jason made sure of that. Uncle Jason said I hit that thing right like I was taught. But it wasn't an animal, it was a spirit, so the bullet went right through it. He said that's why he lied to the police. I did everything right, but that howler did the rest. He took my gun. He told me he shot a deer, but Dad got in the way. He made me say that over and over when the police came, and I said it to him. Uncle Jason shot a deer, but Dad got in the way. Uncle Jason shot a deer, but Dad got in the way. Uncle Jason shot a deer, but Dad got in the way. I've been telling that story for 6 decades. I told it so much I started to believe it myself, but Uncle Jason's been dead a long while. And the way I feel, I guess I'll be dead before long, too. The Osage, they didn't used to believe in heaven. And the peyote churches, they came and they believed it now. They're mostly Catholic and Baptist or Quakers, but Dad did, Uncle Jason did. Maybe they're right. And that means that I'll see Dad and Uncle Jason real soon. Maybe it's more like what the Osage believed before. That death is just a long night. And if that's it, I guess I'll sleep. Well, maybe now that I talked about this, I won't have to hear that howl when I close my eyes. I wouldn't count on it, though. It always seems to find a way into my head. It always seems to find a way to trouble me. At the end of the interview, Corbin Andrews revealed the palm of his hand to Hannah Harris. He had been subconsciously scratching it as he spoke, and he seemed more excited than frightened to see a bloody number 6 imprinted on his flesh. Hannah left that cabin with an uneasy feeling in her gut. She researched Corbin's family and found that his dad had died in a deer shooting gone wrong back in 1959. Recorded sightings of the Ozark Howler span back to as early as the 1800s, where frontiersman Daniel Boone claimed to have encountered and shot a creature in Missouri like none he'd ever seen before. Corbin Andrews died 6 months after giving this interview. He was found in his cabin where, despite being covered in a bear and elk fur, it appeared he had frozen to death. Some stories follow bloodlines like shadows. If this reminded you of the legends whispered in your family, those tales that were probably just stories, well, you're not alone. We keep these memories alive here by the hearth. Subscribe to join our circle of storytellers, and perhaps next time you'll recognize the signs before they find you. And also, well, there's something else about that number 6 that Corbin mentioned, something Hannah Harris discovered in her research that she never published, but well, I'll save that for another evening by the fire. And until then, you keep your family stories close and you listen when the old ones try to warn you. And for more scary horror stories, please share and subscribe. We'll see you in the next video.